Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 on this happy hour Friday here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Caplan is one of the hosts of the Inside the Birds podcast on the Inside the Birds platform. It drops Mondays and Thursdays all off-season long. And as we told you just a moment ago, some of the dates for the upcoming OTA off-season workouts, May 31st, June 2nd, 3rd, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. So should be a lot of fun. The Eagles have not been one of the teams that were out there during OTAs, and the process of putting the 53-man roster and the practice squad begins on Tuesday, and it continues through the first week of June. But Adam Caplan, we got a lot of new faces in that front office that will be helping to put together the 2022 Eagles. As Howie Roseman has got a lot of new compadres in that front office. You foreshadowed it on Wednesday. You said Andy Weidl expect to go to Pittsburgh. That has happened. And now what? How do they replace him? And where does that leave this Philadelphia Eagles front office? Happy Memorial Day weekend to you.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, good to talk to you. Stay safe, everyone. I know where you are in South Jersey, there's tornado watch out there, so be careful. Take cover if you need to. But yeah, look, it's really interesting. So the latest, as we reported earlier, Mosher put out that Brandon Hunt's coming in. Brandon Hunt was the pro director for the Steelers. His title was pro scouting coordinator, but we're told his real job was what he really does or did for a living for the Steelers for many years was he was their director of pro personnel. And as we reported earlier today, he's going to have a hand in pro and college scouting, and they'll go from there. But he's really experienced, mostly on the pro side. So the college stuff will be relatively new to him, but he's very talented, very well respected. And look, he just interviewed for, let's see, he interviewed for a high-ranking job. Here's what's very interesting. If Andy Weidl would have stayed, he would have worked side by side, we're told, with Andy Weidl. So now Andy Weidl is now the assistant GM of the Steelers, and Brandon Hunt now comes to Philly. I mean, it's the way it is, but that's what's happened. So, yeah, look, they've lost a lot of people, Mike. We put this number out on our show that dropped on Thursday, that the Eagles, they had 20 people on their scouting staff, remember, an operations staff and a scouting staff. On their scouting staff, they had 20 people to start the year, 8 already gone, and there could be more departures, who knows. But there's at least 8 of them are gone. Now, we understand that some of them are now, they've lost one person in operations, Catherine Rach, who's now a assistant GM of the Browns, and 3 people on the scouting side have left to be assistant GM. So 4 people. Have you ever heard of this, Mike, from an NFL team? They've all got the same job, assistant GM with another team. 4 of them. Pretty incredible.
No, I find it fascinating that for a couple of reasons, Adam, that teams, Howie takes a lot of slack from the fans out there, and yet teams around the league are saying, whatever you're doing, we want to get a piece of that. We want guys in your front office. What's the secret sauce over there? That 4 people in this front office were deemed all at the same time to have enough talent to be elevated to that level for another team.
Yeah, and understand, Mike, that some of them because of relationships. Like, we had reported that Ian Cunningham was going to go with Ryan Poles because they're very close. This happens. Now, I don't know. I think Catherine Rach and Andrew Berry were friendly. So she knew him, he knew her, and that had something to do with Catherine becoming assistant GM with the Browns. They have not announced it yet, but it's definitely going to happen. But that's what happens. People hire people they're comfortable with or know each other. It's rare. It's not impossible, but it's very rare that you hire someone you don't know. What happens, though, a lot is if you don't know them, they're recommended, and we do see some of these people who work for the Eagles that were highly respected and recommended to hire and talk to, and that's what's also happened.
We also know this front office now, as we know, new look. You got Weidl out, you got Hunt in, you got Catherine Rach out, you got Cunningham out, Brandon Brown in. Does that put a lot more on the plate of Howie Roseman? I mean, does this put a lot more on his plate at this point right now?
Well, Mike, it's funny you say that because the word we had heard during the free agency and draft period, it's the most involved. You know, he's a GM, but remember, he hands off a lot of stuff to Andy Weidel. Andy Weidel would set the draft board. But this is the most involved how he had, because, you know, he has to balance a lot of stuff. He's a very busy job. This is the most he's been involved in a long time because of the loss of both personnel directors before the draft. Remember, Mike, this is what, you know, Roseman went on the record, and he's clearly bothered by it, and that's why they were the team that brought up that rule that has been adjusted now. You know, they were the reason. The Eagles were the ones who brought it up, and other teams, they weren't the only ones. But they were the chief reason why that rule not only got brought up, but it got passed. Were there only certain times you could during the year that you could try to hire someone away from another team, and that's because they lost both directors. You should never lose anyone until after the draft. That's quite frankly, I would agree with the Eagles in that one. That hurt them in terms of having experienced voices. Now, we could also say this: the draft looks pretty good on paper. We'll see how it looks going forward. Last year's draft looked good. Andy Weidel, remember, set their draft board. He is gone. The big issue, and Tom Donahoe's gone, who's Andy's mentor, and we're told the story about him retiring is not true. He hasn't decided yet, we're told by multiple sources. We'll see what he does. But losing Andy Weidel, Mike, is a big deal because he set their draft board, and the entire scouting staff reported him. That's a big deal.
Is it fair to ask then, Adam, why didn't the Eagles just promote him to assistant GM? Why, if they looked for one and brought one in, why didn't they just say, we're going to make you the assistant GM?
It's a great question, and we're not even sure what Andy's role would have been. He was going to, by the way, we would report he was not going to be fired, despite speculation, because his brother was let go. He was going to have the same title that he had before. Now, what his role would have been going forward, we don't know if he stayed, but he would have had the same title. Now, the question would be, because they've been looking to hire an assistant GM, what are they going to do? Are they going to promote someone? Or are they going to hire someone from another team? We talked about this on our last show on Thursday morning. John Ferrari is their top operations guy in terms of their league liaison, and he's a really sharp guy. He's definitely going to get a promotion. I don't know what to. There are rumors about assistant GM. That might happen. We're told that that's not set in stone. And another thing is, Mike, and we're certainly in this group, we've been told certain titles are going to happen. We're told some of those may not happen. The titles, Mike, as we said on Inside the Birds for 5 years, this is our fifth year, the titles don't mean anything. You have to find out what these people actually do. It's kind of like you give a guy, let's say he's the director of travel. Well, okay, he must book the flights. Well, sometimes the director of travel may not actually be doing that. He may be doing something else. You have to understand what people do, and what their title says does not always say what they do, and that's the whole point here.
Right. So Weidell's out. He's in Pittsburgh. Hunt is in. Looks like he will take his place, as you guys discussed Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And all this change. Why so much change? Why is all this happening now? Well, there's a little insight on that. And then you got these new hires as well, so you're going to have a different feel. Is this suggesting that Philadelphia, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie want to kind of shift the way they do things? In other words, are things, for years, this position's not as valuable, that position, is it that thought process, or do they want to just kind of do things differently?
See, we've said for years that analytics, and everyone knows this. They should know it if they don't, but I think most people do. I know most Eagles fans are really sharp, know this. The Eagles are one of the most analytical buildings in the NFL, but yet, because of Andy Weidel's influence, they were still going to have and Joe Douglas before that, Joe's guy was Andy, who he brought in. They were always going to have a heavy emphasis on film study. But going forward, you have to wonder, with Tom Donahoe out, Andy Weidel out, Ian Cunningham, who was brought in by Andy, and Brandon Brown, who was essentially he was a personnel director, but his expertise was more on the pro side. You have to wonder who are the football guys that are left. It does make you wonder: are they going to be more analytical? It's something we're looking into, and we mentioned this on our previous show. Alec Calaby is a guy that would it surprise anyone if he has more influence? He's a guy that has had a lot of influence anyway. We've talked about him off and on for years, but we can never quite pin down how much influence he has. So with all of these guys out, you have to ask the question, and that's something we'll be looking into.
All right. So A lot of change around an Eagles team that has a lot of all of a sudden expectations. We heard James Bradbury, of course, he's in now, so they've beefed up that. But also Jimmy Moreland was in right after Bradbury, so he's a guy who has some experience. We can kind of talk, Adam, about how Bradbury and Moreland will fit into this John Gannon defense, who also spoke Wednesday.
Yeah, and we need to clear something up because, and we appreciate the questions. We take email questions and questions from a message board and so forth. We must have got a half a dozen questions about Jimmy Moreland and maybe Avonte Max will be moved to safety. That's false. That's not happening. There may be a package or two when the matchups call it where Maddox could be playing a package for a couple plays a game here or there at safety. Sure, because by the way, he's done that before. But no, he's not moving to safety, and that's Jimmy Moreland, folks. He's been on 3 teams in 2 years. Let's understand. He's not a bad player. The way we were told, he's the fourth corner, a backup slot, backup nickel. That's what he is, and he can play on the outside if you need him to.
Mm-hmm. And so he's a guy that is more of a depth player,
right? But they've liked him, no question. We get that. But you're always concerned when a guy at cornerback is a top 4 position on an NFL team. Washington cut him, Texans cut him. So just be careful of too high of expectations.
Right. And, one of the things, I think Andrew and I were talking about this yesterday, it's obvious that they like some of the young guys that they have. It just brings in more of a veteran player to kind of push those young guys, and if he makes a team, great. But if not, at least there was a guy that pushed them. Because after Maddox, there's not a lot of veteran presence in the backup roles.
Mike, here's a nugget for you, okay? When we talk about Jimmy Moreland, and another reason why it's still shaky they don't make the team. You know how much money he's making this season? I was looking up his contract. I have access to that stuff, so I was looking at it. He's making $2.5 million this season. He had a raise by his contract structure based on the CBA. He gets a raise in the 4th year based on certain parameters. He's making $2.5 million this season. So he's. If he wants to make, now I know there's no guaranteed money, but if he's going to be on the roster, one of two things are going to happen. He's going to take a pay cut, or he's going to have a pretty good role, maybe bigger than we thought. It's hard to justify this stuff of paying a guy who's going to be a backup player at corner $2.5 million. And again, the club would have leverage because he's on the final year of his rookie deal, and that to me would be a concern. In fact, his exact salary is $2.54 million. No guarantees, but that's a high number for a backup. That's just, to me, that you're not going to make that unless you're a prominent player.
Yeah. Was there anything to this whole Nick Foles thing this week? Did you hear any of this here? Foles, had interest in coming here. The Eagles didn't seem as interested. Foles wanted to.
No, the agent who does a great job, Justin Shulman, is a really good agent from Athletes First. I know he was looking around and calling, talking to teams, and no, Gardner Minshew is the backup. I don't, that's. In fact, we never even talked about it on our show Thursday because we knew there was never anything going on.
Uh-huh.
So, it was never. There was anything real. Gardner Minshew is the backup. No, the thing you got to keep a look at, and we're going to talk more about this because you just gave out those dates. I want to take a look at Carson Strong because I saw him at the Senior Bowl and he didn't look right.
Yep.
I want to see how his knee is. This kid's really gifted. Their hope is, because of the contract structure, is that he can make the team. Now, obviously, if he doesn't make it, they still own the $200,000 plus guarantee. The hope is, because Minshew's on the final year of his rookie deal, that he could be the long-term backup to Hurts if Hurts is the starter or somebody else. Because he's pretty gifted, but he's got to get over this knee issue.
All right, there you go. So for all the people who were inquiring to me about Foles, not much there. He ended up where? In Indianapolis.
Yeah, multi-year deal. He's there because of Frank Reich. And Frank knows what to expect from him. He's not going to rock the boat. It's interesting. Nick is an unbelievable story and a great dude. And funny story, Andy Reid is the reason why he was an Eagle. People don't really realize this. Without Andy Reid, you never would have heard of Nick Foles. And the Eagles probably never would have won a Super Bowl. It was Andy's idea. When Russell Wilson was taken, two people in the room said, Andy said, we're taking the quarterback. The round they took Nick Foles was not the grade they had on him. It was Andy's decision. And he said, we're taking the quarterback. And it happened to be Nick Foles. That was not the grade they had on him. It's pretty interesting. As you brought this up, I remembered that.
Nice.
And good for Nick, though. Good for him to continue to play. Remember, Nick was basically going to retire after the Rams cut him, if you recall.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And it's obvious his numbers in Philadelphia have far been superior to any other stops. He has seemingly not been able to catch on and succeed anywhere else he has gone. But for whatever reason, when he has played in Philadelphia, it has clicked for him.
Here's why. Gimmick offense, Chip Kelly. That was the word. I'm going to give you another nugget here. So I'm going to say 2013 or 2014 press box at the link. I'm sitting next to someone who's doing an advance. The guy, I said, "Hey, how about this Nick Foles? How good do you think he is?" He goes, "Oh, it won't last." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "No, he's not that good. It's the offense that he's playing, and trust me, he'll be exposed for being a good backup." And I kind of bristled. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Well, this guy was right and I was wrong. This guy, Nick was a terrific backup, and what a story! Obviously, what he did for those 2 games in the playoffs. They got by obviously in the first game against Atlanta, but what he did against Minnesota and New England, I mean, even if you're not an Eagles fan, listen to Mike and I. Some of the best football any quarterback has played in this town. Better than Jaws, better than anyone, and not take anything away from Jaws, but better than Randall Cunningham, Donovan. No one has ever played 2 games. And to think that Nick Foles outdueled Tom Brady, really? Are you serious? It happened.
It happened. We saw it. Unbelievable.
I can't believe it, but
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, all-season workouts Tuesday, and then June 2nd, 3rd, June 6th, 7th, 8th. So next
They announced this, huh? I didn't look at my email. I haven't seen this.
That's what I have been told. I don't know that they officially announced it, but I think that is the dates. 31, 2,
Good,
3,
I want to go.
6,
Great.
7, 8, right?
Great. Okay, we'll call you. We'll be doing them on Football at 4 here. We'll talk about it. Great.
Absolutely. We'll have stuff, it looks like, next week, them out on the field, OTA work. Now, just real quick, I think Sirianni and them, if they're not mandatory, so you might not see everybody there.
Well, they have in this agreement with the players. The Eagles do it differently. Sirianni, to get these guys to show up, they don't have the mandatory OTAs for teams. Everyone's got to go, and they're a little bit more intense. I've been to these things because it's the mandatory OTAs, the last practices before the teams are off for the summer. So what the Eagles do is they have this, as you know, Mike, the agreement with their players committee. And then the players would agree, because it was Nick's first year. He had found out that some guys weren't going to show up, so he got them to agree to show up the first 2 or 3 weeks. Now the stuff that we get to see next week, I don't know if they'll all be there. I'm not really sure, because I have to. The stuff you're giving me is news to me. I didn't know that they were going to. I knew they were going to have it in June, but we weren't sure media-wise when we're allowed to show up and when we could actually show up, because I know they have to. I know by the agreement that the Pro Football Writers Association has, so we have on part of it, we have to be able to see open practices and OTAs. There's nothing the teams could do about it. But we were not told those dates yet, so this is great. This actually clears up my schedule. I'm glad you scooped me there, man. This is good. You could actually text me those dates, my man, so I could make my schedule next week.
That's what I was told.
From your source.
31st,
Yeah.
June 2nd, 3rd, June 6th, 7th, 8th. Now, unless they have altered those, that's what I was told. Mandatory minicamp, not listed, not told, didn't tell me that.
Okay.
But that's what I got for you. I'll text you those dates.
You got it, man. Thank you.
All right, Adam Caplan, everybody. InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash.